At the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, audience were promised James Bond, would return in For Your Eyes Only, but it was a lie. Instead, Eon decided to cash in on this other successful film that came out in 1977. Yes, you guessed it, Smokey and the Bandits. That's right. Bond's gonna be a trucker, and he's gonna stop Blofeld. I'm kidding. It was Star Wars. Only. You guys knew Star Wars.
If only.
Well, it's really funny you say that because Roger Moore ends up showing up in Cannonball Run, which is kind of connected to Smokey and the Bandits in some ways. So
yeah.
Anyway, what you might not know, much like Thunderball before it, Moonraker, the novel, was originally made as a screenplay to be a film. So, Charlie, I know you and I have talked about it, but you've actually read the book that Moonraker's based off of. Some of those elements in that book do end up in later Bond films, but basically Fleming had drafted a screenplay. It went in development sometime around 1955, and then they never made it into a movie, and then he ended up buying the rights back in 59. So then finally we got to Dr. No. We have Lois Chills? Lois Chills plays CIA agent Holly Goodhead.
Did you look into the history of slang terms for fellatio? Like, has head always meant head? Like,
I did not. I should have done the history, but I'm just going to go on a limb here and say that a lot of that stuff's been around probably a long time.
Okay.
So that doesn't surprise me that that's her name. What's interesting is she was originally intended to be in The Spy Who Loved Me. And then she was like, I'm taking a break from acting. I don't want to do anything right now. And then it just so happened that she was sitting in the same seat next to Lewis Gilbert on an airplane, who's the director for this movie. If you remember, Lewis Gilbert also directed our least favorite movie on this list, You Only Live Twice, and he had done a couple of the Moore films.
And then they let him remake it.
Basically, he got to remake his movie. He comes back for this movie. But he was sitting...
And he remade the last movie.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, he was sitting in an airplane with her, and they were sitting next to each other, and he was like, you would make a good CIA scientist. So then she got in the movie. And then also...
Do you give good head? You're hired. You need a crazy straw for that thing.
I do. That'd be great. I think she does a decent job in this movie. There's a couple of scenes where I'm like, but overall, she exuberates some kind of confidence. But
she's kind of a great balance of everything we've said about all Bond. There is spit all over my desk after that review. I'm like, what is all this? Oh my God. She kind of balances out everything we've talked about Bond girl wise up until this point. You know, where it's like she's capable both physically and mentally, but Bond still rescues her and he kind of pisses her off. They don't jump right into bed. She sleeps with him because she has to at first, but then eventually she wants to. You know, she kind of has all these elements that we've been talking about from the get-go.
She's not. But she doesn't
shine. She doesn't. She doesn't shine.
She doesn't have the.
I say that objectively, and then subjectively, she's like, whatever. You know,
she's decent. She's good. She's not my favorite, but she's definitely not my least favorite. So then we have Hugo Drax, who was cast originally as James Mason. You guys may or may not know James Mason. He was in the movie North by Northwest. He was also in Lolita. He was in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Famous British actor. They didn't hire him because originally this movie was going to be filmed in England. But a lot of it had to do with the production cost. At the time, there was really high taxation on film. So they decided we're going to film everything in France instead. So they moved most of the production to France. And doing so, they had to make an agreement with France so that they could shoot in all these really cool locations that they would hire French actors and French crew members and such. So then we got Mikel Lonsdale, who plays Hugo Drax. And he's only there basically because he had to fill this criteria. But I mean, I still think he does a fantastic job in the role. And then also our returning favorite, Richard Kiel, returns as Jaws. And he was originally intended to be the bad guy till the very end of the film. But due to the popularity and with children writing letters to Eon Productions asking that he be a good guy because they really like that character. I don't understand this.
Yeah.
They were
That's like asking Dracula to be a good guy.
exactly.
Get
They're
out
like,
of
hey,
here,
can we make him
kids.
a good guy
You
now?
shouldn't be in the theater anyway. Get the fuck out. Drink your 7-Up. Go home.
And then also, fun fact, the cable car scene. The wire that he actually mounts down on the cable is actually made of licorice, even though he was still wearing his steel dentures.
Did they do it so it wouldn't hurt him, or did they do it to look convincing? Does
I guess
licorice
they did
look
it
like
to
metal?
look convincing. I mean, I don't know how else
Maybe
you're gonna have.
licorice paints well. You know?
I don't know. And then moving on to another person of importance is Michael G. Wilson. His name shows up in the credits, and if you've watched later Bond films, you may recognize his name. But Michael G. Wilson is Albert R. Broccoli's stepson, and he's been connected to the films up until this point in different aspects, either as
Like assistant and stuff.
assistants or AD or a PA or whatever. But in this film, basically because Salzman's gone now, he kind of steps up into the role of being an executive producer, and he'll be the executive producer / producer for many of these films going on. And then,
Dude, what a power move.
but
He's
yeah.
like, he's a PA, and he's like, hey, mom, go
Yeah.
f- the boss. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, mom?
Pimping out his mom.
But
That's
what I thought,
right.
so the craziest part about all this,
Yo,
to
mom,
me-
you give him some good head.
the craziest part to me about all of this is we've mentioned Batman so many times as far as relationship with Batman, either the characters or Batman, how this actor was in this movie or whatever. It just turns out that Michael G. Wilson's actual father was the first on-screen Batman in the 1940s serials. So that's a weird connection that I was like, oh, that is really bizarre. In the featurette of this film, they alluded to the possibly ILM giving them a quote for the effects for this movie because they didn't have an effects house at this time, and effects houses were kind of new, specifically with Star Wars. So, and George Lucas, as you guys know, created Industrial Light and Magic, did all the visual effects for Star Wars, and he created the company for Star Wars. And this movie is basically, we want to cash in on Star Wars. But apparently they gave him a quote that was just, they were like, that's too high of a quote. And so they were like, well, I guess we'll have to figure out how to do all this stuff ourselves. And it kind of shows.
Let's just get into that. So obviously we've been leading up to this with every movie. It's been what was hot at the time. You know, last time it was Jaws. Before that was Kung
Bruce
Fu
Lee.
movies. Before that was blaxploitation. Now we're ripping off sci-fi adventures in a Bond movie.
Space.
Like the producers are like autistic people. They just like they're trying to understand human beings, and they're like, you walk up, you say hello, you shake hand. Like it's like they try to anticipate, or they don't try to anticipate. They try to copy these trends as if people are. I mean, okay, people are sheep, but you know, it's like, what are they buying up right now? Kung Fu. We got, you know, we make a Bond Kung Fu movie, everybody's going to come running. It's like, no, you make a Bond movie and people are just going to go see it. If what's hot right now is Bruce Lee, I don't know, just keep doing Bond and people are going to see it. Like, it's such an autistic way of approaching these things. And it's been fine in the past because it hasn't taken such precedent, but we literally have a Star Wars-esque laser battle in this. Like, it just, it boggles the mind the way producers approach things. What was big about Star Wars? The assistant's like, it's like this really emotional tale. It has to do with family. It's like Shakespearean in a sense. Like it has all these underlying themes that we don't need to get into. Oh no, fuck all that. It's just lasers. You know, like it's just surface level understanding of things, and then they roll with it. And yeah, it's I'm not saying I hate the movie for that, but I'm just pointing out how obnoxious it is. Because I mean, I first picked up on the whole Bond philosophy. You know, I remember in high school with Casino Royale coming out, and I'm like, yeah, at school it's like everybody's into poker. And everybody's looking at parkour videos, and then it just so happens to have those things. Or it's like, the person who's the villain, they just won an Oscar. Oh, the person who sung the song, they just won a Grammy. It's just so obvious that they're always just taking whatever is trending on Twitter at the time and then plugging it into the movie. And it's fine when it blends in, but when it sticks out like this, it's like, what the hell? What the hell are you thinking? You know? And I can say all that because by the time Bond gets to space, it does look like James Bond walked into a B movie.
It's interesting you say that because, like, this movie, they specifically were like, well, we have to base this in reality. Of course, we want to make money off Star Wars. So, I mean, there's a clip of Albert R. Broccoli saying this isn't science fiction. We do science fact. So they're like using the space shuttle program, which was still in its infancy. They didn't actually start lifting shuttles off till 81. This is 79. Yeah. So it's like 2 years out from them actually lifting shuttles off. They didn't even know what that was going to look like exactly. They kind of got it right. Alien, which came out the same year, 1979, it's a grittier movie, but the space and the fact that they're in space and all that stuff, like, feels real. Like, even the space station feels real. Or the space ship, essentially. It's a giant oil tanker in space, basically. But like,
and they just don't deal with gravity. They're just like, whatever. Everybody's walking around.
Yeah, we're not going to do some goofy shit.
Because the movie isn't about that. The movie is about, it's this horror movie, you know, and so it's focused in that sense, and anybody's going, what? They would be floating around, you know. It's like, go away.
No one cares. No one cares.
Yeah.
But they have to add that sequence of like, okay, I'm gonna float in here. All right, guys, I gotta press the button, and then like that takes screen time.
But at least when Bond hits that emergency stop, they set that up like this thing needs to spin, so we have gravity, and then Bond takes advantage of that. Otherwise, they would just be burning screen time. But it's like, okay, we don't have ILM, we don't have a lot of really great effects. Let's just overcrank this, and everybody just walk slow and. Can you guys tell? Can you tell? Doesn't it look like I'm in space?
Well, it's really funny. It's because, like, you look at movies from the 1950s and even a little bit into the 40s, and like when they did space, I mean, we hadn't even gone to space yet, so no one had a clear idea of like what it'd be like being in space.
Yeah.
And even if you watch those movies, they do like the slow walking when they're in space. And because it was like, they were like, well, I guess the gravity would be different, but they had no idea that people would like pretty much be floating in air and things like that.
Yeah. So for audiences back then, they're like, wow, did they really film this in space? Which they say in the credits. They say they filmed it in space.
In outer space with exclamation point.
Yeah, which is great, you know. Please give us your money. Give us that sweet, sweet Star Wars money.